Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare.
Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shiv Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shiv Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Shiv Sadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda. तो श्री राधे गोलोकानंद भगवान की जय.
So, Gajendra Prabhu, we are supposed to begin text 54 today, but what we'd like to do is 1154, is to do 53, the verse and the purport, just with no comment, just to lead us into the verse 54, because some of you weren't here last week, and this verse is a good segue into 54. So you can read the Sanskrit and translation, and then we'll just read the purport. It's very short, and then we'll go right to 54.
Okay. Naham vedena tapsane danena na chejaya shakya evam vidho drishtum drishtavanasi mam yatha. The form you are seeing with your transcendental eyes cannot be understood simply by studying the Vedas, nor by undergoing serious penances, nor by charity, nor by worship. It is not by these means that one can see me as I am.
So this is the form, the two-handed form.
Yeah. So we're speaking about the two-handed form of Krishna here. Krishna first appeared before his parents Devaki and Vasudev in a four-handed form, and then he transformed himself into the two-handed form. This mystery is very difficult to understand for those who are atheists or who are devoid of devotional service. For scholars who have simply studied Vedic literature by way of grammatical knowledge or mere academic qualifications, Krishna is not possible to understand, nor is he to be understood by persons who officially go to the temple to offer worship. They make their visit, but they cannot understand Krishna as he is. Krishna is understood only through the path of devotional service, as explained by Krishna himself in the next verse. So now we'll do 54. Next verse. This is a very important verse. Okay.
Bhaktya tvananya shakya aham vidho arjuna gyatum drishtum cha tatvena praveshtum cha parantapa. My dear Arjun, only by undivided devotional service can I be understood as I am, standing before you, and can thus be seen directly. Only in this way can you enter into the mysteries of my understanding.
Just one point before we read the purport. It's very long, so we'll break for a review after the first three paragraphs. There's one really long paragraph, one average paragraph, and one short paragraph. And we'll break then before going on any farther, because it's a very long purport. Okay. Rudrani, I guess. Oh, me? Okay, I'll do it. Krishna can be understood only by the process of undivided devotional service. He explicitly explains this in this verse so that unauthorized commentators who try to understand Bhagavad Gita by the speculative process will know that they are simply wasting their time. No one can understand Krishna or how he came from parents in a four-handed form and at once changed himself into a two-handed form. These things are very difficult to understand by study of the Vedas or by philosophical speculation. Okay. I'll tell you when to stop. Okay, go on.
Therefore, it is clearly stated here that no one can see him or enter into understanding of these matters. Those who, however, are very experienced students of Vedic literature can learn about him from the Vedic literature in so many ways. There are so many rules and regulations, and if one at all wants to understand Krishna, he must follow the regulative principles described in the authoritative literature. One can perform penance in accordance with those principles. For example, to undergo serious penances, one may observe fasting on Janmashtami, the day on which Krishna appeared, and on the 2 days of Ekadasi, the 11th day after the new moon, and the 11th day after the full moon.
Sonali?
As far as charity is concerned, it is plain that charity should be given to the devotee of Krishna who are engaged in his devotional service to spread the Krishna philosophy or Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Krishna consciousness is a benediction to humanity. Lord Chaitanya was appreciated by Rupa Goswami as the most munificent man of charity because love of Krishna, which is very difficult to achieve, was distributed freely by him. So if one gives some amount of his money to persons involved in distributing Krishna consciousness, that charity given to spread Krishna consciousness is the greatest charity in the world.
Shiva?
Prabhuji, I'll pass right now. I'm driving.
Okay.
I'll come at the end.
That's fine. That's fine, yeah. Parag?
And if one worships as prescribed in the temples in India, there is always some statue, usually of Vishnu or Krishna. That is a chance to progress by offering worship and respect to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For the beginners in devotional service to the Lord, temple worship is essential, and this is confirmed in the Vedic literature, Sweta Swatar Upanishad 6:23. Yasya deve parabhaktir yatha deve tatha guru tasyate kathita hi artha prakashante mahatmana. One who has unflinching devotion for the Supreme Lord and is directed by the spiritual master in whom he has similar unflinching faith can see the Supreme Personality of Godhead by revelation.
Bill Prabhu?
Bill?
Oh, okay. One cannot understand Krishna by mental speculation. For one who does not take personal training under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, it is impossible to even begin to understand Krishna. The word "tu" is specifically used here to indicate that no other process can be used. Just a second. Can be recommended or can be successful in understanding Krishna. The personal forms of Krishna, the two-handed form and the four-handed, are described as sudarshanam, very difficult to see. They are completely different from the temporary universal form shown to Arjuna. The four-handed form of Narayana and the two-handed form of Krishna are eternal and transcendental, whereas the universal form exhibited to Arjuna is temporary.
Seema?
The words Tvad Ananyana Drishta Purvam, words 47 state that before Arjun, no one had seen that universal form. Also, they suggest that amongst the devotees, there was no necessity of showing it. That form was exhibited by Krishna at the request of Arjun, so that in the future, when one represents himself as an incarnation of God, people can ask to see his universal form. The word na, used repeatedly in the previous verse, indicates that one should not be very much proud of such credentials as an academic education in Vedic literature. One must take to the devotional service of Krishna, only then can one attempt to write commentaries on Bhagavad Gita.
So we stop here. And one quick comment in that last sentence there is, one can not write commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita unless one is really fixed in devotional service. Otherwise, it's not really going to be helpful in becoming a devotee. It won't be accurate. It will not be really reflecting the devotional movement. Oh,
Just a question here.
yes.
The word bhakti strictly means devotional or by devotion.
Yes.
But Prabhupada translated this as devotional service. So he basically equates the notion of devotion with devotional service.
Yes.
Which
Prabhupada
is-
says that, Prabhupada says, and so our acharyas say, that love or the expression of bhakti is done through one's activities of service. It's not just an emotion, but it's an emotion put into motion. We do something, whether that is a pujari worshiping the deity, or if it's someone who is studying the scripture and then teaching, or it's maybe a businessman making some money so that he can donate so he can build a big temple, or it is someone who's a gardener who's growing flowers very exquisitely to be offered to Krishna at the temple. These are the different services that we do as part of our bhakti.
Dynamic, is it dynamic?
It's dynamic. It contains kriya, which means activity in it. The idea that activity is engaged, is contained in bhakti.
Or chanting.
Or chanting.
Yeah.
The thing is that that's the whole point of the Bhagavad Gita, because Arjuna wanted to withdraw from the battlefield, not fight, because he thought, well, I'm just going to go off and meditate. I don't want to get involved in this kind of wretched warfare. And Krishna said, hold it a second. You're a Kshatriya. It's your duty to fight, and I need you to fight because I want you to get the glory for this battle, and we're going to clean up all the bad elements and put your brother, who's a great devotee, on the throne. So Arjuna was trying to weasel out of his work by philosophical argument, and Krishna was having nothing of it. But that's a good point, Bill. Many people think devotional service or bhakti is inactivity, but it's not inactivity.
On the contrary, it's manifested.
It's manifested in activity. There are other good comments like that. That's really good. Or questions. There are no bad questions.
Another verse in chapter 18. The text says
Well, okay, I got one more.
Well, one more.
Ananaya, the third word there, strictly means single-minded or unalloyed. But in the word for word translation, he stretches it out to,
Yes.
so it's not a literal.
Yes, it's not. Prabhupada purported this meaning here, but it means the same thing. It means it means one pointed vision, and that also means don't mix it with fruitive activities or speculative knowledge. In other words, if we have devotion to Krishna, but we want to claim some kind of reward in this world for that, that's not going to be pure devotion. And if we think that we can understand Krishna by figuring it out ourselves without his giving us revelation, then we won't ever understand Krishna.
So there's a verse here in chapter 18, which is pretty similar to this verse in chapter 11. It's chapter 50. It's a verse 55, where Krishna is again repeating the same thing. There's slightly different use of words, Bhatyamam abhijanati yavanyas jasmit tadvataha tatamam tadvato gyadva vishati tat anantaram. And Krishna says, one can understand me as I am, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, only two, the word two before, we've seen that, by devotional service. And when one is in full consciousness of me by such devotion, he can enter into the kingdom of God. So
Yeah.
this is repeated. This is in the middle of the book. Is Krishna saying only by the undivided devotional service. And at the very end, he's reiterating this point to Arjuna, who is going to be making up his mind to fight. Because Krishna says, I've given you all this instruction. Now you deliberate and act as you wish. And then he repeats the point that only by undivided devotional service can he, Krishna, be understood as he is perfectly.
Prabhupada liked the term unalloyed devotional service. You know, an alloy is good when you put it into iron, it becomes steel, but an alloy in gold dilutes it. So that 24 karat gold is pure. It may be a little too soft, so you want to maybe bring it down to 21 karat gold, or maybe even 18. But if you really bring it down to 12, it's hardly gold. So the point being is that unless we have unalloyed devotional service, that is not mixed with something else, if we mix it, we can end up like the demigods, like Indra, who are very powerful, but don't ever understand who Krishna really is, because they are too full of themselves. And if we mix it in a different way, we don't ever understand Krishna, and we may just think that the Supreme Absolute is the unmanifested state of Brahman, and in that way we'll enter into the unmanifest state of Brahman, but that's really a far cry from a loving personal relationship with God. So that's what Prabhupada's meaning when he really hammers down on the idea, don't mix it with something else, which is the same thing as one point.
And he also
Interesting that Prabhupada also brings a guru into the purport.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
That is the key to God realization or Krishna consciousness. Only the guru can get us there, and the devotion to guru needs to be unflinching, unalloyed, like it is for Krishna.
Yes, and actually, as you can see, the verse is being the purport to this verse that Rudrani just read, Gajendra is highlighting. If anyone wants to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he has to take to pure devotional service under the guidance of a pure devotee. And then we also see this verse, Yasya Deve Para Bhaktir, Yadha Deve Tata Guru, Tasyaiti Katita Hyarta Prakashati Mahatmana. That means that that means that one has to have unflinching faith in the Supreme Lord and understand that through unflinching faith in our Guru. And we sing that in the mornings. And Mangalartik, we sing Yasya Prasada, Bhagavat Prasado, Yasya Prasada, Nakati Katopi, that through the grace of the spiritual master, one gets Krishna, and by the grace of and if without the grace of the spiritual master, one cannot understand Krishna. So very important points. Thank you for bringing those up. These are all good. They help us really churn out a more meaning here of this verse.
Yeah, like Srila Prabhupada talked about Krishna consciousness not as a religion, but as a scientific process, meaning that when you have a scientific situation, it's because you have experience that by combining certain things or following certain regulations, it yields a certain result. So there's a difference between what we understand as religion, which is mostly something that we practice for the purpose of obtaining happiness or material welfare or material benefits. And something else is the spiritual process, which is a transcendental scientific process by following which we can eventually come to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead and had spurti, a vision of Him and personal experience. So like when you are combining chemical elements, you know exactly what is the formula to be able to get certain results. The same thing happens with the spiritual process like we're following. There's very specific rules and regulations that give you very specific results. And we follow in the examples of the many, many self-realized individuals who've been following this process to achieve the perfection of being able to have connection with the Supreme Lord in a very, very intimate manner, with a very intimate relationship.
Oh yeah, but that's a very important point. It's by revelation, as Rudrani was saying. Very important point. It has to be through revelation by studying from the Guru.
Follow a specific process. Yeah. Gives specific.
Prabhuji, I have a question.
Yes.
In the end, does the Guru ultimately give the final step to Krishna consciousness, or can someone, or does Krishna himself intervene and take the soul to the pure platform?
Well, that's a good question. It's ultimately we need to have a guru to guide us. And our relationship with Krishna is direct, but it's directed by the guru. So it's the guru who teaches us the process and the way, like Rudrani was saying, to actually realize him. We realize through revelation, and the guru shows us the way that we'll get the revelation. But it's Krishna directly revealing himself to us. But it's Guru who's teaching us, you do it this way, and they do it that way, and do it this way. And by doing it the way he shows us, then we get the direct revelation from Krishna. So it's combined.
I have something very interesting to share probably on this. And this was, I think, before a few weeks, just 3-4 weeks before. Is one devotee in India, in Mumbai, and very ill. She was almost, I think probably had few hours or something to live. And she is a disciple of Radhanath Swami Maharaj, who is here. I think currently he's in US, in Chicago or somewhere. And so in the last minutes, they had a conversation, and like the other devotees who were present, they were telling that, so what Radhanath Maharaj, Swami Maharaj was saying was that he was calming her down and saying like, don't worry about this body can go, but you are going to go to a lok, Guru Lok, and I will be there too. And then I'll meet you there, and Swami Prabhupada is there, and then we'll all go to Krishna's place. So this just happened. This is a real example, real conversation which happened from Radhanath Maharaj to the devotee. And I think there's a recording which I haven't seen yet, but I got it. I'll check it out and see if it can be shared.
That'd be interesting to listen to. Yeah. Because Guru is giving direct instruction there, which is in one sense comforting on this platform, but it's absolute because he's telling her what he realizes, and that's the truth.
Yeah, and they're just few hours before in the hospital. She was in the hospital, the Zoom call.
I'd like to bring up, you want to say something?
Yeah, I would like to bring up also this verse from chapter 4, which is verse 34, where there's this section at the end of the chapter 4, where it's all about transcendental knowledge. And how do we gain this transcendental knowledge? Just approach somebody who has seen the truth, inquire from this person, and render service unto him. In this way, this person will be able to reveal all this knowledge to you. So Krishna is saying that. Krishna is the one who is telling us that we need to approach a guide, a guru, who has seen the truth and who can help us in our progress in spiritual life. Krishna himself is recommending. This is chapter 4, verse 34. And then the verses that follow this one, all the way to 43, is all an explanation by Krishna of what it is that we call transcendental knowledge, by which we can become completely liberated from the conception that we are the body.
Before we move on, I really would like to do one more thing, though, because it's really mentioned here and it's very important. And it's in the purport. It says, as far as charity is concerned, it is plain that charity should be given to the devotees of Krishna who are engaged in his devotional service to spread the Krishna philosophy or Krishna consciousness throughout the world. Now Prabhupada says something that's very important for all of us. Krishna consciousness is a benediction to humanity. Lord Chaitanya was appreciated by Rupa Goswami as the most munificent man of charity because love of Krishna, which is very difficult to achieve, was distributed freely by him. And this is a very important point because we pray in the morning. Sometimes we sing bhajans, and many of the bhajans, the purport of the bhajans is that Radha and Krishna are difficult to obtain. But through the mercy of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda, we can actually attain that position of serving Sri Sri Radha Golokananda, Sri Sri Radha Sham Sundar. And we do that because they've given us real mercy in the form of the most modern, in the form of the mantra, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We can chant it on beads, we can sing it. We can hear bhajans, kirtans. This is really it's such a great benediction because otherwise the process as is given in Bhagavad Gita is doable, it's easy, but Lord Chaitanya streamlined it even more so that we can actually understand through his mercy very easily the mysteries of service to Sri Sri Radha and Govinda. Very important.
Somebody may read the Bhagavad Gita, and unless there is some understanding, like Srila Prabhupada is giving us these purports, they say, oh, this is very nice, but it really doesn't penetrate. The one thing that Srila Prabhupada says in his introduction to the Bhagavad Gita is that how many times the Bhagavad Gita has been translated into how many languages, but very few Bhagavad Gita translations have actually transformed the hearts of those who are hearing and learning about the Bhagavad Gita. It has to be given by somebody who has that love of God in his heart to be able to transmit that to the hearer or to the reader, under the guidance of somebody who likewise has that love of Krishna in his own heart.
And actually what Rudrani just said is echoed in the purport we read. The word na, used repeatedly in the previous verse, indicates that one should not be very much proud of such credentials as academic education in Vedic literature. One must take to devotional service of Krishna. Only then can one attempt to write commentaries on Bhagavad Gita. So we see, you get a commentary by Prabhupada, you get a commentary by Bhaktivinoda Thakur or the great acharyas, and these have ability to transform people's lives by giving them bhakti. And if not, you don't get bhakti, you get something else. It may have some value, but it's not the ultimate true value that you get from bhakti. I think we could read another couple paragraphs. We can at least read, I think, 2 more paragraphs.
At least.
No, it's almost 10.
You can read some more.
Yeah, let's try to read at least 2 more paragraphs.
Maybe more.
10 minutes.
Who's reading now?
Okay, who's reading?
Rajendra's reading?
I can read now.
Okay, Shiva can read. He stopped his car.
Yeah. Krishna changes from the universal form to the four-handed form of Narayana and then to his own natural form of two hands. This indicates that the four-handed forms and other forms mentioned in Vedic literature are all emanations of the original two-handed Krishna. He is the origin of all emanations. Krishna is distinct even from these forms. What to speak of the impersonal conception? As far as the four-handed forms of Krishna are concerned, it is stated clearly that even the most identical four-handed form of Krishna, which is known as Mahavishnu, who is lying on the cosmic ocean and from whose breathing so many innumerable universes are passing out and entering, is also an expansion of the Supreme Lord. As stated in the Brahm Samhita, Yasheka Nishvashita Kalam Atva Labhya Jitvati Loma Vilaja Jagad Anand Natha Vishnu Mahan Sa Yah Yasha Kala Vishesho Govindam Adi Purusham Tam Aham Bhajami.
Who's reading next?
Should I continue reading or?
Yeah, Seema will read. So,
The Mahavishnu into whom all the innumerable universes enter and from whom they come forth again simply by his breathing processes is a plenary expansion of Krishna. Therefore, I worship Govinda, Krishna, the cause of all causes. Therefore, one should conclusively worship the personal form of Krishna as the supreme personality of Godhead who has eternal bliss and knowledge. He is the source of all forms of Vishnu. He is the source of all forms of incarnation. And he is the original supreme personality as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita.
So this next paragraph, and we'll stop after this paragraph, gives proofs of Krishna's supreme divinity from different Vedic literatures.
Sonali?
In the Vedic literature, Gopala Tapanta Upanishad 1.1, the following statement appears. Satchitananda Rupaya Krishna Yakatsi Karne Namo Vedanta Vedayatta Guruve Buddhi Sakatsni Sakshni. I offer my respectful obeisances unto Krishna, who has a transcendental form of bliss, eternity, and knowledge. I offer my respect to him because understanding him means understanding the Vedas, and he is therefore the supreme spiritual master.
Bill?
Bill?
Okay, let's see. Then it is said, Krishna Vipram Daivatam, Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead. Gopala Tapani Upanishad 1.3, Ekavashi Sarvaka Krishna Yidaya. That one Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and he is worshipful. Eko Pisang Bahuda Yo Vabhakti, Krishna is one, but he is manifested in unlimited forms and expanded incarnations. Gopala Tapani Upanishad.
So, questions or thoughts about these two paragraphs? Bill?
It's interesting that, of course, I have no choice but to use European American pronunciation for the Sanskrit. But it's very interesting because when I hear people from India say these things, I can when I hear people from South India versus North India, it's like I pick up differences that I can't when they're speaking English to me. It's very interesting that I have a recording from a South Indian guru of reciting the Gita in Sanskrit, and he has a very thick South Indian accent. He's Tamil or something, and it's really remarkable because it's picking up. I could never.
Bill, excuse me though, is there a point that you want to talk about?
No, I mean, it's just an aside.
Yeah, well, it's a nice aside, but just before because we only have a few minutes.
Right.
Any questions or realizations? Because this section here really is dealing with how special Krishna's form is. I can read. I'll read over this the verse from the Brahma Samhita again because I think it's worth hearing again. Yes, yaika nishpasita kalam atavalamya jivanti loma milaja jagadandanata vishnor mahansa yayasya kala vishesho govindamadi purusham tamaham bhajami. Now remember how Prabhupada says that the four-handed form of the Lord, which is closest to Krishna, is Mahavishnu. But here's what it says about Mahavishnu. The Mahavishnu, who's really big, that's why he's called Mahavishnu. Everything's coming out of him, into whom all the innumerable universes enter, and from whom they come forth again, simply by his breathing process, is a plenary expansion of Krishna. In other words, Krishna, one portion of his energy is this great Mahavishnu. Krishna's playing in the spiritual world with his friends, with the gopis, running away from his mother, doing so many things. And just as an afterthought, practically, there's his Mahavishnu. Therefore, I worship Govinda, Krishna, who is the cause of all causes. So what does Prabhupada say? Therefore, one should conclusively worship the personal form of Krishna. That's why. He's so great. One of my godbrothers gave the example saying that you really know who's the boss by who doesn't have to do any work. In other words, the CEO of the company goes off to the golf course and tells the others, take care of things, I'm going out to play. So Krishna, he sells basically he expands himself into different forms. You do the work and I'm going to have fun. So that's the position of Krishna.
We were talking about the exclusive devotion to the Supreme Lord. And so in the Srimad Bhagavatam, there are some verses that deal with that. There's in Canto 11, chapter 12, verse 8, for example, it says, Kevalena hibhavena gopyo gavo nagamirgaha yenye mudha diyo naga siddhamam iyur anjasa. The residents of Raj, such as the gopis, cows, animals, the snakes such as Kaliya, and the non-moving entities with their consciousness covered, such as the twin Arjuna trees, bushes, and scrubs, all attained the perfection of life and came to me, that's Krishna talking to Uddhava, simply because of their one-pointed devotion for me. So this is an exclusive devotion for the Supreme Lord, how everybody comes to him through this exclusive devotion to him. And there is another verse, 11:14:21. I can only be attained, again, this is Krishna talking to Uddhava, I can only be attained through bhakti, performed with full faith. I am naturally dear to my bhaktas who take me as the exclusive goal of their practices. Even the dog eaters can purify themselves of their lower birth by performing bhajan to me.
And the Prabhupada used that principle coming to the West, that we had a very low birth by any standards, but he comes and says, chant Hare Krishna, follow this process, and we can become purified. Everybody can. So I think we have to stop because time for our bhajan, kirtan.
Yep, Prabhuji. So we'll see 5 minutes of Rath Yatra. This is before 2 years, though.
Okay. Before the masks.
Before the masks. From Toronto, Canada.
Haribol, that was nice.
So,
Thank you for playing that. And it's always good to get together.
yeah.
Oops. I don't know. Okay, so Thank you so much.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare Krishna.
Have a good
Hare
weekend.
Krishna, Prabhuji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna. And we'll see some of you sooner and some of you later. And we're so glad to have your association. And have a good weekend.
Yes, everyone stay safe, stay well.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Hare Bo.
Hare Bo.